Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. Shout out to my friends at the Chief of Staff, Kansas City. Been over there, or at least was over there quite a bit last month and in October, doing some events with them, and they're such a great resource. So if you are looking for a job or even just some advice or trying to touch things up, or if you're hiring someone and you need that resource, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. I've got a great connection today here in my community of Kansas City. I'm joined by a leading lady in Kansas City's cultural renaissance. Her name is Lindsey Rood Clifford, the powerhouse president and CEO of Starlight Theater, who was ushering in its boldest act yet. As the first woman to helm this iconic venue in its storied 75-year history, she's reshaping a cultural institution with creativity, courage, and an unmatched commitment to the community. Because the arts are more than entertainment, they're essential to turning passion and purpose into a standing ovation, no matter what city you're in. I firmly believe this, by the way. I'll just say people are surprised sometimes when they find out that I like to go to the theater and I like to go to the symphony, and as if somehow if you like sports, you're not allowed to like those things too. But you know what's interesting? When I go to the symphony or when I go to the Starlight Theater and people are kind of looking at me funny, like, hey, you're here. And I'm thinking, well, if you know who I am, that probably means you're coming to a baseball game as well. Yes, it is okay to like sports and the arts all at the same time. And I know that Lindsey knows that as well. Lindsey, how are you?
I'm doing great this morning. And that was a great way to kick us off, because entertainment's entertainment, right?
I mean, like I tell people all the time, I'm living this dream world. And I say, look, if you love sports and someone pays you to talk about sports, it's a pretty good gig. But pick whatever that thing is, because I understand a lot of times when I'm speaking to audiences, there are people in the audiences that are attending, maybe reluctantly, that are saying, I don't like baseball. I prefer music, or I prefer reading, or I prefer hiking, or I prefer whatever it is. Like whatever your thing is, if you're lucky enough to get to live in that world, it's one heck of a bonus, which is my way of segueing into what you do. You are running this unbelievable, iconic theater. And I know with that comes a lot of responsibility, and I'm sure even some sleepless nights. But how much do you love and pinch yourself to be able to do what you're doing?
I was going to say, it's still, I'm in my third year leading the organization, almost my 20th year working at the organization. And I grew up going to Starlight. So it still is a pinch me most days, because as I often, when I'm introducing myself, I say, look, at the end of the day, I'm just a recovering theater kid that ended up running the largest theater in the city. And I don't quite know how that happened, but it is a dream come true every day, especially in the summer when you turn back and see that big crowd and see like just the joy that happens out there. It's pretty amazing.
It's such a beautiful and relaxing experience, especially on a good weather night. We can't control that all the time, but there's just something about being out there, and obviously if you're going there, it's probably something you're very interested in. I unfortunately don't get to get out there as much during the summer because our schedules conflict a little bit. But every night, I always look, and every now and then something falls that I'm interested in on an off night, and it's like, all right, I know what we're doing here. Like I wish it would happen more, because it's such a special place to be at. And of course, I've done some stuff inside events there as well. But I want to go back to sort of where this started, and I was looking through some of your information. And so if you had a choice of staying in Kansas City or going to New York out of school, and I saw that the possibilities were mailroom at William Morris Agency or paid intern at Starlight. And by the way, how cool that the paid intern one day ended up being the CEO. That should be hope for a lot of people, that it starts somewhere and you can always get anywhere. Was the thought of going to New York to be in theater, or what was the plan at that point?
It was to be in entertainment. I mean, I don't even think it was to be in theater at that time. I think I had really identified that I'm a purpose-driven person, and that matters. Like I always tell our interns still every summer that the relationship with your work is the one that matters the most. So how you think about what that's going to look like, and I knew that for some reason early on. And that's really what drove the decision to end up staying in Kansas City, thinking it might just be a stepping stone. But even when I was trying to get to New York, it was all about, I just know that this is the place, the space that I want to be a part of, because it had been so important to me for my whole life, really. So it was just a continuation.
So to stay here in Kansas City, you could never have known back then that one day you'd be the CEO. And I'm guessing that wasn't even part of the dream or the thought process. Maybe it was. I can't imagine a 22 or whatever you were year old saying, one day I'm going to be the CEO. You're just trying to get your foot in the door. I mean, I remember that. Like I could not. I did an internship at a TV station my junior and senior year in college, and went back there 2 years after graduating and worked there. It wasn't home. It wasn't the end destination for me, but I could never have imagined when I was doing that internship that 31 years later, I'd still be in television. What was the thought for a young Lindsey as an intern at the Starlight?
You know what's crazy to think about now, because also think about Kansas City 20 plus years ago. It was a very different Kansas City. And so I feel like and someone who was not born, but I always say sort of born and raised here. I grew up in the Kansas City area. There was very much at the time, like you felt like an obligation for an exodus, right? It wasn't the city that as a young person you necessarily thought staying in it feels like success. And that's crazy to think about now, because I think we have a very different feeling about the vibe in Kansas City and how great it is to be a part of the city. But at the time, I always tell people, like, staying in Kansas City almost felt like a concession. Like, I'll do this for now. And I didn't at all think that I would still be here 20 years later, or what those opportunities would be that would come along the way, or the Kansas City that would grow up around me, and all the amazing things that have happened in the last 20 years. So you can't know what you don't know, but gosh, I'm so glad I made the decision that I made at the time, which was really to go get some experience, be at a place I loved. It had an end date, right? I was going to work for a summer as an intern. And the fact that I got an offer at the end of that to stay and do more events. And at the time I thought, sure, I'll continue to get experience. I like the people I work with. I love this theater. I grew up going to it. We'll just see where it goes from here. And here we are 20 years later.
Here we are 20 years later. And you did mention it's a different world too. I wonder how that affects the theater, and whether it be the people that are coming to shows there, or whether it be some of the people that you're hiring. Because now, you know, and my kids are in their early 20s, and I feel like I have a decent feel for the vibe of younger. I remember when we moved here 18 years ago, a lot of kids would leave Kansas City. It's the opposite of what you're saying, but it's the same thing. Everything was about temporary. A lot of kids would leave Kansas City and go to New York or Chicago or whatever it was. And maybe eventually when they started a family, they'd come back because they found that it was a little more affordable, or they liked the pace, or whatever it is. To me, it feels like now, I don't have the numbers, so I'm sure somebody does, that kids are getting out of school or whatever they're doing, and they're saying, yeah, I'm good to stay here. This place has what I need. Is that what you're seeing? I mean, it sounds like that's what you're talking about. And how much is, if at all, is that affecting what goes on at Starlight?
I mean, I think it's just a more attractive place to live and work for a lot of reasons, not only because of what's happened in sports, but if you think about, again, 20 years ago, even 10, we didn't have a Kaufman Performing Arts Center. We didn't have some of the assets that we have now in arts and culture the way that we have them, which I always say also makes for a unique moment. Like, we have, for the size of our city, so much to offer that it also makes for some challenges as someone in the space, because there's only so many people and only so much time and money. But I do think that from a talent perspective, we're able to retain more, and I don't feel that same sense of obligation. I have two grown stepdaughters who are in their 20s too, and a 17-year-old son. And I just think that they see this place as an asset in a different way, and they don't have that same imperative to go out somewhere else to get experience or to live a different life in a bigger city. I think they see that this city has a lot to offer them. So for us, I think it helps us have great talent in our backstage jobs, the ones that kind of keep the engine running on arts and culture. And I think as we add more venues and more opportunities, it also helps some of those bigger shows that used to maybe skip Kansas City come to Kansas City. And that's what we want too, because otherwise we have a lot of surrounding regions that don't get access to that kind of entertainment otherwise. They're not going to New York all the time or even up to Chicago. So I think in this kind of region, especially for more rural communities, having a place you can drive to get Broadway theater, right? Or some of these big live music events that we have, they're not going to get them otherwise. They're going to see them on TV, and that is not the same thing or the same experience.
I love reading about your first experience of going to the Starlight. It brought back some memories for me too. And I think Annie was my second. I grew up on the East Coast, and then we moved to Chicago when I was 13. But being outside of Philadelphia meant that my parents would take us every now and then up to Broadway. And so, if I remember correctly, the first ever show I saw, I bet I was 6 or so, I don't know, was Peter Pan, and the second ever show I saw was Annie as a young kid. And so, you know, I was lucky enough to be exposed to the theater when I was a kid. My theater career. My career as a thespian lasted all of one show in 8th grade, where I ended up being an extra in the Princess and the Pea, and was told afterwards that if I had auditioned in a lower octave, that I would have gotten one of the main roles. But I was trying to sing. I can't believe I'm telling this story. I was trying to sing a Phil Collins song a little bit too high in the audition, and then they realized later that I had a good deep voice, and I actually could have had a decent part. And so I was part of like the jesters or the king of the court or whatever it was. Anyway, that was it. Thankfully, my daughter picked up the theater, and she's got that piece, as I've told you before too. But I do remember walking in the feeling. That was, by the way, that was like 14 years old. But I remember the feeling as a 5, 6-year-old, whatever it was, walking into Broadway and just the awe of it and the experience of it. Like, I think every kid should experience something like that, or experience Starlight, because it could really send them down a path that maybe they'll never have. How much do you see that? How important is that, especially with where we're at in the arts today, with funding being cut and all of this? Like, to me, I believe that if people experience it, they're going to love it.
I agree. And I would say if there's a single biggest driver for me, as I think about why being in a place like Starlight ultimately matters to me, it is what you're describing. It is because I also had access to live arts experiences at a young age, and you know how transformative they are. And they're also sort of indescribable, right? It's the one thing, it's kind of like, I always say, same thing as going out to a baseball game or a football game. You can see it on TV, and it's not the same as being there in person. And theater and music is the same way. I can tell you how you're going to feel when you're in that crowd, and it is not the same as being in that crowd and having that experience, that shared experience of watching live theater and knowing that what you see, what you learn, what you experience can be absolutely different than the person sitting next to you. You can take different things away from it. So one of the unique things about Starlight, because of its size, right, we're almost 8,000 seats in an amphitheater. Most Broadway houses are like 2,000 seats, and that's big. And the next largest theater that does Broadway musical theater like we do is like 4,000 seats. So we're really big for live theater. I would say we're kind of mid-sized for live music, but really big for live theater, which means we have this unique opportunity to create access, right? We can give away free seats. The economics allow for it. We can have $16 tickets to touring Broadway, which you can't get in any other city in this country. So those things, I think, are part of what makes it a special place to be a part of. And it's been one of my probably biggest priorities in this role, is to say, how do we take this place where most people know what happens on this main stage in the summer, because that's the tradition, and really build out what we're doing as a mission-based nonprofit to bring more people close to live theater and music. And to help people understand, whether they think they're a sports person or they think they are not a theater person, that it is for everybody, and that it can have this really big impact on who you are, whether you become an artist or not. But being a patron of the arts, I really believe makes us better, healthier, happier, and communities thrive.
Amen to that. That is universal, by the way, and it's across the world and in any community. So what do you remember about Annie as a 4-year-old? What was the feeling for you as a young girl?
I was just telling the story this week. We have some friends in from New York from Disney Theatrical Group because we're kicking off a new program. And so I was telling a story about my first Starlight experience being at Annie, and that clearly one of the things that struck me is here's a whole story about a little redheaded kid, and I was a little redheaded kid, and seeing yourself on a stage, just there's something about that because you put yourself into the story, and whether you think you're going to be an artist or not, it just opens up your mind and your imagination. But I was telling Disney folks that I also happen to love The Little Mermaid. So there was clearly just a theme through what I was identifying with as a little redheaded kid. But what I remember about coming there, and the Starlight at the time looked very different than the Starlight of today, because you used to enter from the top of the hill, right? It's an amphitheater. So the ticket office used to be at the top of the hill. So you'd come in at the top and then look down at what looks like kind of a Disney castle in a park. And just being blown away by this being a place that you could come to, and all the people, it felt so big. But I think, to your earlier point, it's also a place that feels accessible. It doesn't feel stuffy. It doesn't feel intimidating, even though it was big. And maybe it's because you're outside. I often say maybe it's because you can hear sounds from the zoo across the street. But I just remember I was there with my grandparents, and you feel this like intimacy of being with your family in whatever little group you're in, but you're also experiencing something like larger than life in this massive crowd of people as they're watching this story unfold on stage. And it wasn't a story that I knew at the time, but man, was I singing a lot of The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow for a long time after that experience.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be the coolest thing too. I mean, when you have a chance just to, open your eyes and observe. I mean, which I know you do, but I also am going to make a guess that when you're working, you're all over the place. It's fast paced, and you're probably putting out fires and this and that and everything. But when you have that moment just to exhale, even if it's for a couple of seconds, and look around and see that little girl or that little boy or the family having that experience, there's got to be no greater feeling as someone that is so entrenched in theater and has been, and now running this organization, to be able to see, because you describe a feeling that people get when they're at the theater, and you could describe it, but you don't really know until you feel it. It has to be so cool to feel what they're feeling as you watch that.
I think seeing it, and it's not always just on young people, but you do. I mean, I think it resonates for me the most when you see a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old watching the magic of theater for the first time. I often say I probably watch audiences more than I watch what's on stage anymore. Partially because my office has a balcony that overlooks the audience. I can't see the stage, but I can see the audiences, and I love nothing more than how audiences move together at concerts, laugh together at theater. You can tell when there's big moments, and they all do that big like inhale, that if something spectacular happened. But when you're sitting down in the seats too, and you see like that slack-jawed look of wonder, right? That discovery of something, of someone that is just so captivated. And that, to me, that's that power of, I guess, storytelling. So you say you're not a thespian, but I think if you're out there talking to people and doing this kind of thing, you're using theater skills, because it's just storytelling. But it's kind of, it is kind of magical, and there's not many places and spaces anymore where you're like, that feels magical. And it does at Starlight. Yeah,
it's, and you're right. I mean, I'm definitely not a thespian, but there is performance in everything that I do when I get on stage, and the storytelling piece of it. And that fuels me for sure. And seeing the audience reactions and seeing the engagement. So no doubt about it. How has theater changed in recent years? And I mean, we're post-pandemic now, thankfully. We've got people getting back together. So that's good. I think we all craved that during the pandemic, and people have come back. But what have been the challenges, and what's different nowadays?
We are post-pandemic, and what a strange chapter of history to live through in arts and culture and for everybody. But I think there's a new normal that everyone's trying to figure out how to operate within. And I think especially for some of those more traditional art forms. So when I say traditional, for live theater, for your symphonies, for your ballets, for your operas, where I think to be an audience member for those historically, it was a very passive thing. You were sitting, you were receiving the art. Audiences, what they want seems to be changing so rapidly. And we have a really unique vantage point because we have live music, which I think boomeranged, right? Live music has never been bigger. And I really believe that part of that is because we get to interact with live music. We get to sing along, we get to dress up, we get to dance with them. And especially new generations of audience members, that's what they want. So on the live theater side, where I see that is like the shows that people really want to come to are the ones where they can do some of the similar things. It's the shows where it's Legally Blonde or it's Mean Girls and everyone comes in pink, right? Or they're coming out with groups of friends and they want to be a part of the show differently. It's the Disney shows where you have little princesses running around the theater all dressed up, feeling like they're a part of it too. But there's real challenges because I think what audiences want, just like in society, like it's very divided. What we love traditionally is not necessarily what new audiences love. What's coming out for new audiences runs the full spectrum and makes it hard to fill a big theater like ours. And the economics, like for everyone, have just changed. So even though I would agree that I think audiences are back to those pre-pandemic levels, the costs of everything are so much greater that it makes sort of what the economic headwinds are for live theater to be successful and sort of self-sustaining is a real challenge. So I think that's what we spend a lot of time talking about is just what do audiences really need from us now? And post-pandemic, it's been a lot of comfort and nostalgia more than new and risky. People really like a good jukebox musical. We really like musicals that are based off of things we know, movies or books. But I have to believe that at some point we might get tired of seeing the same thing regurgitated a lot of different ways. I don't know when that is. But after I think such a period of great change, we really see audiences driven towards the things that I think make them feel safe and comfortable, and they just want to have fun. And I think maybe that's a comment on the state of the world too, of like out there is hard, in here we want to find joy, and that's okay. And I think we're just trying to figure out how to answer that call.
I mean, the pendulum always swings. It's never going to stay where it's at, right? So you don't know when, and you don't know what, but it'll become obvious. And then I guess it's up to you to adapt to what do you know now? And I know you'll keep learning, but what do you know now about running a theater that you didn't know before?
What do I know now that I didn't know before? Well, I think like anybody, it's always harder than you think that it is going to keep changing. What people want is going to keep changing. And so we have to be much more nimble as a 75-year-old institution than we've ever had to be. I think we did mostly the same thing for a really long time, and I think that you can't do that anymore. So today I know we have to be able to move faster, adapt faster, innovate faster, because that's what it kind of the moment calls for.
The world is moving so fast too, Lindsey. I mean, there's not a discussion I have that doesn't involve AI at some point. And I am pro all of that, by the way, too. But I'm also anti losing your autonomy, losing your brain, losing your creativity. And so I think that we're searching for that happy medium right now too. Is that affecting what you're doing? I mean, AI is affecting all of us. I also know that it can help you do certain things better, be more efficient, expose maybe weaknesses and flaws. It can't, I don't think, and shouldn't take away the creativity of the arts, the authenticity of the arts. And I think that's actually probably true for no matter what your profession is. Maybe we don't think of ourselves as actors or performers, but I think that we understand that actors and performers have a voice. They have a personality, that it's not just robotic. And so that to me is the challenge for people when it comes to AI is allow it to make you better, but don't allow it to take away who you are. What kind of challenges are you dealing with that right now?
I don't know if I would say it's a challenge. I think, a year ago when AI really seemed to take off and suddenly we were all really talking about it, there was this big concern around what it was going to mean for artists and creativity. Would it replace it? I think I've watched the conversation shift to more what you're saying, which is it's not going to replace true creativity. It can only regurgitate what has already existed. So how do we use it to make us more efficient, to maybe look at things more clinically, to help with those things that don't require our true human brains or the creativity that's in us, to allow us to do more of those things. But I think there's still certainly that concern out there. But I think on our end, we're seeing where can it give us more time to be creative? Because that is probably one of the great challenges that it always is to be creative. You often need some brain space and this pace of life that we're in, where you have to move faster. Creativity often requires you to have like a slowdown, right? And the ability to think. So how can we leverage the tools that are now available to us to give us more of those moments, to really ruminate, or be creative, or get out there and create new things, and use it as a tool in that way to just make us faster where it doesn't matter, and give us the time to slow down where it does.
All right, let's get to the baseball themed questions for the theater woman here. Biggest home run that you have hit in your career?
Before I answer these, I will say, as someone who grew up playing softball, but also all I know about baseball is often from damn Yankees. So that's what I bring into this.
I remember seeing the damn Yankees at an outdoor theater. I don't know how I remember this because my cousins live near there. And I don't remember if we were back visiting after we'd moved away or not, but I just, I could still hear Shoeless Joe from Hannibal Moe. Damn Yankees outdoors, and I believe it was Old Bridge, New Jersey, maybe has an outdoor theater. I don't know, or somewhere around there. It was beautiful. It's funny how these little things stick in my head. And, I live with Royals, Yankees, and all that. For you, it's damn Yankees. So nice little tie in there. Biggest home run?
Biggest home run. I think I'm in the middle of it. So when I thought about this question, I thought like, it really is this moment of like, I feel like I'm watching the ball sail over the back fence. Starlight's in the middle of its biggest capital campaign, community program expansion in its history. So it was a $40 million campaign, the biggest capital improvement to the theater in almost 25 years. We're putting a big canopy structure over almost half of our seats. We're halfway done. We're going to be installing that over not this off season, but the next off season. And that's going to really allow us to expand our programming. And we have expanded our community programming, and it's doubled the impact. So we literally doubled our numbers of those that were impacting through our community programs, from like 30-ish thousand to 65,000+ that are being served through programs. And that just feels transformational at a chapter change moment for the organization too. We just celebrated our 75-year anniversary. So it feels like this is going to be the biggest thing that the organization has done, that really I was on the front end of, because in my prior role, I was running our fundraising team and overseeing philanthropy. So this will be the biggest thing. I think this is my big home run right now. Love it.
And the ball's still up in the air. So
ball's up in the air.
On the way. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
Swing and a miss. So much of this work is the stuff you can't control, with weather and the nature of live entertainment. So I really was trying to think of what are things you can control that you missed on. And oddly, what I was thinking about is, as I moved into this leadership role, one of the things I believed, because it was true for me, is that if you gave your people runway, that everyone would run and fly. And that's not true. And so I, along the way, probably gave some more runway to people, thinking that's all they needed, was runway to fly. And there were some misses that I think along the way impacted, both our team and the people that also maybe thought that all they needed was runway and learned a different lesson. And that's hard. The people part of the work and leadership is hard, and the hardest place to miss. But I think what I learned out of that too is, I think, to be more discerning, and also what support really looks like for your different team and your talent, and that it's not the same across all your people, but it has big impact.
It's interesting, because I think we as leaders sometimes we want to say, okay, we want to give them their freedom, we want to empower them, but it's different for every person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, how about small ball? What are the little things that add up to big results for you?
Mine have been in doing things that create structure that build trust. So I think in leadership for me, one of the biggest things is to do what I say I'm going to do and be reliable and consistent because it builds trust. And sometimes that means you have to say no to certain things that you'd like to say yes to in order to stay true to the systems and the processes and the structures you've set up. But I think as I've put more infrastructure into our organization, nonprofits are not always known for having a lot of structure. And we want to be nimble. We're a creative organization. But again, I go back to the AI comment, like you want to go fast and use tools over here so you can have space to slow down. And I think structure creates the ability to have those moments to be more creative and innovative. So I think as I've put, and it's little things, it's changing policies, it's changing benefits for the team, it's changing process. But I hope trust in just who I am as a leader and what it means for the organization. And that's made our team stronger.
All right, let's get to my 4 final questions as we round the bases. I love the culture and the answer on small ball there as well. So much of what I believe in. First question, let's go away from theater for a moment. And I was reading that, well, actually, I heard you talk about this at an event we did for the Name of Grace, but you had just come back from a bucket list trip to Norway. So you and I have that in common. We've both been in Norway. Mine was 21 years ago because my cousin married a Norwegian girl, and I was there for the wedding. But for it to be bucket list, well, one, I want to know how amazing the trip was. 2, why was it bucket list? Is Rood by any chance some type of a Norwegian name or no?
It is Norwegian, actually. Good for you. Not everyone would guess
I was
that.
looking at it. I'm like, I was looking at it. I'm like, that's a very Scandinavian sounding name. That's got to be why it's bucket list. I'm glad my intuition was right. Okay, give me the background on the family history, the Norwegian family history, and what that trip meant to you.
Well, I mean, for it to be bucket list for me, I'm a win in Rome. Like everything's on my bucket list. I want to do everything once.
Me too.
So if I'm in a place that Norway is actually, when I went back just recently, it was the second time I've been there. My oldest stepdaughter studied abroad in Oslo and then wanted to get married there. So that's why we were there she wanted to get married on a boat in an Arctic fjord under the Northern Lights. So I actually had the opportunity to officiate their wedding. So I have conducted a wedding ceremony on a boat in an Arctic fjord under the Northern Lights. So amazingly memorable. But also, as you know, I don't know if you did this when you were over there, but there's a big cold plunge culture over there. So like get in the hot sauna, jump into an Arctic fjord. So that's the kind of I don't know that I would say that was on my bucket list before I went over there, but when you get over there and they're like, this is what we do here. I'm like, well, we got to do it. We got to apparently put on a bathing suit and walk through the snow and jump into freezing water because that's what they do here.
Wow. No, I don't know if I have the guts to do that. We did not do that. But I do remember that the wedding and the celebration and everything was still going into the wee hours of the night, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, and it was still light out.
So we've been there in the dark times, but again, Northern Lights time, and it was it is a late night culture though. Like Scandinavia knows how to stay up and have a good drink and a conversation. And so it's a special place to be and lovely people, like just the nicest people.
So nice. I totally agree. Okay. Second question, as we round the bases, you are and I imagine this comes into play, but I've never heard of such a thing. You're a trained crowd manager through the International Association of Venue Managers. What does that mean? And what do you know that we don't know?
It means that you can trust that when you're at Starlight Theater, people are going to take care of you in an emergency situation more than anything. And also that I can't go into any other venue without wondering if other people are also that and watching how they're moving people, because it does take a little bit of the joy out of being in other entertainment venues and facilities, because you can't unknow what you know or unsee what suddenly you're trained to look for, like where are the exits and do they have enough staffing and who's in security.
It's the price to pay, and there are a few prices to pay for doing a job like you do, doing a job like I do, that you know more than you knew before. because you have to know it and you have to experience it. So it just changes the perspective.
It totally does. It makes you a little judgy. I hate to say it, but you definitely go into places and you really appreciate when it's great, and you're probably a little judgmental when it's not.
Yeah. All right. Third question as we round the bases. You do so much, and you referenced this a little bit, but I want to hit on it more because you're so involved with charities in the community, and there's so many opportunities at any theater to make an impact in the community, and certainly with kids and inclusion. And we never know when that's going to change some lives too, right? To give that exposure. Can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that maybe people don't know about that are going on there? People look on your calendar and they see the Broadway show that's coming in. They see the musical act that's coming in. I wish I could go see OAR this summer, but I already looked. We've already got a game or some kind of conflict, as I do most nights. What about behind the scenes that people aren't seeing, the really impactful stuff that I know you live to do, and so many of your people do, because it does make an impact?
We now have 10 community programs that serve, I'm proud to say, all ages, because we have 2 new programs that serve elementary school aged kiddos. But really, they're centered on 3 things, which is how do we create access to live theater and music? So those programs are driven by that. How do we have educational opportunities? And I always pause to say, like, if your brain goes to, are we training singers, dancers, and actors? Yeah, a little bit, but I would say ours are really centered around what can we uniquely do at Starlight. So as an example, if you didn't know, Starlight has one of the largest regional high school musical theater awards programs. We have this year, almost 70 participating area high schools that will come out in May to a free program that's essentially the Tony Awards for high school musical theater in Kansas City. And it's amazing. And it is, of all the things we do, if I could bottle the energy of high school musical theater kids and having like 5,000 of them and their parents as their biggest fans and educators together, we would all be happier for sitting in the theater on that night. We would all be better people. And then the last is really around workforce development. So we have as I like to say, a CEO producing internship program. And then we also have a new tech theater program. So workforce development, again, you think you got to have the artists on the stage. I'm a really big believer, and I think Starlight generally, we're trying to support all those backstage jobs too, all the engine that makes what happens on the stage possible, and also to share what those jobs and career paths are, because we don't always talk about them. And one of the new programs, as I said, in a tech theater, that was one of the biggest gaps that we heard about in the city with our other arts and culture peers. And also because we had all these great high school theater kids, not all of whom are actors, dancers, singers, but they wanted to work backstage and they didn't have a lot of opportunities to learn more and get plugged in. So I'm really proud that the work we do behind the scenes is really about what can Starlight uniquely do, leveraging this amazing community asset that we have that can get people plugged in maybe the non-traditional ways of a lot of arts institutions to what the whole ecosystem is. So it makes the whole ecosystem of theater and music stronger.
So important. And I really love too the focus on the technical side, the tech side of it. I say it so often in TV too, that all anyone ever does is see us in front of the camera, and none of it happens if that crew doesn't show up, and none of it happens well without our crew doing their job. And they're generally not the ones looking for the attention as well, but I think they deserve it just as much. And I've seen that with my daughter, as she's done a lot more on the tech side, having been on stage for so many years and now learning the intricacies while she's in theater school up in Chicago of all of that work. And that itself is a craft and an art that people don't see. So I love the focus on that.
I agree. And I also think like stage managers, people that have a stage management background, they could run the world. If I see someone has that, I'm actually hiring right now, and you see stage management on someone's resume and you're like, that person can do anything, lead actors, artists, like that is get some stage management experience and tell people about it.
Yeah, she's been going through that as well, which is super cool. All right, last question. This is like I'll do this for certain guests. This is like my least favorite and my favorite question all wrapped in one. Least favorite because sometimes it's hard, but I just always think it's fun and interesting. Favorite all-time musical, what is it?
No.
See, that's why I hate it.
hard.
It's not fair. It's like asking somebody like a favorite kid. You could.
I was going to say, you're asking me to choose between my children.
Right. It's a terrible question, but yet it's always fun.
I guess I would say it probably changes too. You know what? I'm gonna say Rent. It was formative for me. It's what I remember as like in those pre-teen years that taught me about the world. And now as I look back, taught me about a world event and sort of the impact of HIV and AIDS at the time, right? And did it through storytelling and taught just, I don't know, I think theater can hit you at certain stages of your life where it's really impactful, everything we've talked about. But for me, it was also a very adult musical that I was listening to at a young age, but I think I'm better for it. So I'll go Rent, even though it's very hard because I could probably tell you different stages, different musicals for many periods of my life.
You have the right to change at any given point.
Yes.
But at least at this moment, that's the answer that was coming. Mine never changes, I don't think, as much as there have been some over the years that at least threaten Les Mis for being my favorite. Les Mis will always be my favorite. So I can't.
That's my son's favorite. So good choice.
Yeah. I can't get away from it in the best of ways. I don't know how many times I've seen it, but seen it in Kansas City, seen it in Chicago, seen it in London, and I'd see it any chance that I get again. So, but you know what? Any day at the theater is a good day. I firmly believe that, and I can just go straight from a baseball game. Problem is that I'd also like to see Spammel out there this summer, but I looked and we are home that week, but we've got night games every single night. So then it's like I need a rain out. Well, a rain out's not really good for you either.
Either of us. It's not good for either of us.
It's not good. We just, always hope for good weather. That's all we hope for. Regardless, I know that a lot of people are being entertained, whether they're coming to the Starlight, they're going to Kauffman Stadium, they're going to the Kauffman Center for Performing Arts, and on and on and on. It makes the world go round. And Lindsey, it's been so great to have you on the podcast today. Keep doing what you're doing. If people are interested, they should be interested. And you don't know how to find out more information, caseystarlight.com is where you can find out everything that you need to know. Congrats on everything. Keep it up. And thanks so much for everything you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.